We all want what's best for ourselves, especially for our health. And when you have diabetes, that may mean taking insulin. Insulin will help you control your blood glucose. To get the best control, you need to understand how insulin works, how to use your insulin safely, and how to cope with hypoglycemia and sick days.
When I take my insulin, I don't even think about it. I just do it. It's become a natural part of my everyday existence.
Having to take insulin doesn't necessarily mean your diabetes has gotten worse. And it doesn't necessarily mean your diabetes is more serious than the diabetes of someone who takes pills or of someone who takes no medication at all. It just means you need insulin as part of your management plan to help keep your blood glucose in a healthy range and help you avoid the long-term complications of diabetes. Diabetes affects the way your body uses the food you eat. Most of the food you eat changes to glucose, a form of sugar. Glucose enters the bloodstream, causing your blood glucose level to rise. As your blood glucose rises, the pancreas releases insulin. Insulin works like a key to open the cells and let glucose enter. The glucose is used for energy now or stored for later use. In people who don't have diabetes, the body maintains a balance of glucose and insulin in the bloodstream by releasing the right amount of insulin at the right time. But when you have diabetes, your body can't keep your blood glucose in this healthy range without help. If your body does not make enough insulin, or it doesn't use insulin properly, you may be prescribed insulin to keep your blood glucose in a healthy range. There are several different types of insulin. They are rapid-acting insulin, short-acting insulin, intermediate-acting insulin, and long-acting insulin. Insulins are grouped into one of these types based on their actions. How quickly they begin to lower your blood glucose is called onset. The time they are working the hardest to lower your blood glucose is called peak. And how long they work to lower your blood glucose is called duration. It's important to know which kind of insulin you use and understand how it works. Rapid-acting insulin includes Lispro, Aspart, and Glulazine. Please note that these are the generic names of these medications. You're probably more familiar with the brand names. These will appear on screen as we list the generic names. Their onset begins very quickly, usually within 15 minutes. They peak at 30 minutes to 1.5 hours, and their duration is a total of 3 to 4 hours. Since rapid-acting insulin begins to lower your blood glucose almost immediately, you must be ready to eat your meal before you take it. Otherwise, your blood glucose could drop too low. The only type of short-acting insulin is regular. Its onset is in about 30 minutes to an hour after injection. Its peak is at 2 to 3 hours, and its duration is 3 to 6 hours. The only intermediate-acting insulin is NPH. Its onset is in about 2 to 4 hours, its peak at 4 to 10 hours, and its duration is 10 to 18 hours. There are 2 long-acting insulins, Detamir and Glargine. Long-acting insulin onset happens in a little more than an hour, and it works at the same level for up to 24 hours with no peaks. It's important to take long-acting insulin at the same time every day. Many factors will help you and your diabetes care team determine which insulin or insulins will work best to help you achieve your blood glucose goals. These factors include the type of diabetes you have, your age, your weight, and your lifestyle. Sometimes using more than one insulin achieves the best blood glucose results. Taking more than one insulin can even out your blood glucose level throughout the day. You may take a long-acting insulin to provide a steady dose of insulin throughout the day and inject a rapid-acting insulin just before each meal.
My insulin routine is I take one insulin shot that lasts for 24 hours a day, and then I take a shot every time I eat.
Some people inject 2 insulins in the same syringe at the same time, a shorter-acting and an intermediate-acting insulin. These are called mixed doses and may be mixed by hand or they may be pre-mixed. Be aware, however, that long-acting insulins, detamir and glargine, cannot be mixed with other insulins. Remember, using insulin can help keep your blood glucose in your target range throughout the day, and keeping your blood glucose in your target range may help you avoid complications from diabetes in the future. The more you know about your insulin, the more likely you will use it safely and effectively to help you achieve your blood glucose goals. One thing you can do is record your blood glucose at specific times. This will help you figure out when your insulin begins to work, when it works hardest, and for how long. In addition, make a list of all the medications you take, including prescription and over-the-counter, because some may affect your insulin. Show this list to your diabetes care team to make sure your insulin is working properly. Before using your insulin, check to make sure it's the right type and brand and that you know your proper dose. Store any extra unopened insulin in your refrigerator. Cold insulin may sting when injected, so if you are using new insulin, let it warm to room temperature before you use it. The insulin you are currently using does not have to be refrigerated, but most insulins must be used within 28 days after they are opened. Never store any insulin in a place that is too hot or where your insulin could freeze, like inside your car. And never use insulin from a bottle that looks frosted. NPH and some pre-mixed insulins are cloudy and need to be mixed gently before use. If a cloudy insulin looks yellowish or clumped, it should not be used. If your clear insulin appears cloudy or discolored, it should not be used. Never use insulin if the expiration date that is printed on the bottle has already passed. Always keep a spare bottle, pen, or pen cartridge on hand. Check your supplies, including syringes, on a weekly basis to make sure you have enough for at least 2 weeks in case you can't go out because of bad weather or illness. Safe and effective use of insulin also includes recognizing and treating hypoglycemia. Using insulin can cause your blood glucose to fall too low. This is called hypoglycemia.
If I'm working out in the garden and I come in at maybe 1 or 2 in the afternoon, I find myself down to like 45.
Okay. If you skip a meal, exercise more than usual, or your medication dose is too large, your blood glucose can fall too low. To avoid hypoglycemia, you need to carefully balance the insulin you take with the other parts of your management plan. If your blood glucose does fall too low, your body doesn't get the energy it needs to function. Symptoms you may experience include headache, weakness, a cold sweat or clammy feeling, shakiness, hunger, fast heartbeat, irritability, vision changes, and dizziness. If you ignore it, hypoglycemia can get worse and you can pass out. You should discuss the best way to deal with hypoglycemia with your diabetes care team. But here are some general guidelines.
Yes, I did.
If you experience any symptoms of hypoglycemia, check your blood glucose. If it's below 70 milligrams per deciliter, or if you feel too shaky, confused, or weak to check it, follow this procedure. Eat or drink something containing 15 grams of carbohydrate. That could be 4 to 6 ounces of fruit juice or regular soda, 3 to 4 glucose tablets, 5 to 7 Lifesavers, or 8 ounces of non-fat milk. Rest for 15 minutes. Recheck your glucose level. If it hasn't risen above 80 milligrams per deciliter, or if you still feel some symptoms, have 15 more grams of carbohydrate. Once your blood glucose is in a safe range, you need to make sure it doesn't drop again in the next few hours. If your next meal is scheduled within 30 minutes, eat it right away. If it's more than 30 minutes away, have a snack of carbohydrate and protein. If you experience frequent episodes of hypoglycemia or have passed out, tell your diabetes care team. These often signal that changes are needed with some part of your management plan.
Bob, I'm going to give you a prescription for glucagon. It's used in the event
Ask
you have a
if
severe low
glucagon
blood
is
sugar,
right for you.
go unconscious.
Glucagon is an injectable medication to be used when a person with diabetes has lost consciousness because of hypoglycemia. The injection works by helping the liver produce glucose immediately, which then enters the bloodstream to raise the blood glucose level. Since glucagon requires a prescription, talk with your diabetes care team to see if you need to keep glucagon on hand.
Someone needs to administer it.
Finally, be aware that drinking alcohol when you use insulin may put you at risk for low blood glucose. You should discuss alcohol use with your diabetes care team to learn how to use it safely, and remember to eat if you do choose to drink. Sometimes changes in your daily routine are unavoidable, like when you're sick. An illness like a cold or the flu can raise your blood glucose. Since high blood glucose levels can complicate your illness and slow your recovery, it's important to continue taking your insulin if you become sick. You may, however, need to make some adjustments, perhaps even increasing your insulin. To be prepared to manage your diabetes and your insulin when you're sick, work with your diabetes care team to create a sick day plan.
So you're eating lunch.
Take the time now, before you're sick, to talk to your diabetes care team about insulin and illness. This will help make managing your diabetes when you have a cold or the flu a little easier. Insulin is an important part of managing your diabetes. Understand how your insulin works and learn how to use it safely, especially when your self-care is complicated by hypoglycemia or sick days.
Diabetes is a disease that wreaks havoc on your body, and you really don't know it. You don't know the damage that it's causing. The weapon against that was to make sure that I do everything possible to keep my blood sugar in control.
I think being a diabetic now is a little easier because you have the types of insulin that can accommodate your lifestyles now. Okay, and I find that a benefit.